This is probably going to be a pretty short video, and that's because I've already covered this topic in a different video with this guitar over my right shoulder. It's a Glary GTL. Essentially, it's a Tele thin line. But I felt like I needed to include it in the series or the playlist of videos I'm doing on this guitar. If you've been here before, then you're probably sick of hearing me say this, but if you're here for the first time, then I kind of need to fill you in on the backstory of this guitar because it has an interesting one. It started out as an Epiphone 335 figure top in Raspberry Tea Burst. I stripped all the polyurethane off of it. I did a lot of things which I'm including in this playlist. There's going to be a link to that in the upper part of the screen, but just briefly to tell you some of those things. I put a Bigsby on it. I changed out the bridge post. I changed out the pickup rings, the pick guard bracket. I changed all the wiring out. I even modified the headstock into this Gibson shape. That's going to be controversial. I had to re-drill the holes. I put an overlay on there. A lot of different things. I'm going to, like I said, fill out this playlist with all these videos. It's going to take me a while, but I will get to it. But back to the topic at hand, we're going to be talking about this guy here. I'm going to show you a close-up video or photo of this thing. It's essentially just a razor blade installed on the top of a dowel rod and some painter's tape wrapped around it. This particular dowel rod is 3/8 of an inch in diameter, and it happens to be about 1 1/4 inches long, but both of those dimensions can vary. Like I said, I have made a previous video on this topic, so if you're interested, go check that out. But essentially, you just shove this razor blade down onto the dowel rod, taking care not to cut yourself. And what it does is create sort of a guide for you to take the color coat off of your binding. Now, if you know anything about finishing a guitar, you know you typically only do this, like I said, when you have put a color coat on and you take the color coat off the binding and then you put clear coats on it. So with this project and with this Glary guitar that I talked about a little bit before, I did this after the guitar had been totally finished. And I know it's going to be sort of a niche group of people that would want to do this, but you can do it. You might get a little bit of a ridge when you're done. And of course, do this at your own risk. But as far as the ridge goes, it's pretty negligible. You might be able to feel it if you're really paying attention. You can't really feel it on your arm when you're playing, but just to say, you know, you can do it to a finished guitar. It's not sort of typical or the standard way to go about it. But if you would like to widen the binding on your guitar, it is possible to do it. In this case, I did it to this guitar before it looked like this and before I stripped all the finish off. The reason was sort of twofold. I did want to widen the binding and make it look sort of more classy and more outlined. And the other reason in my head, I thought if I took some of the binding or the finish off of the binding, I could sort of pre-score it. And when I took the clear and the color or the finish off, it would sort of have already come off the binding, and I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time on that, especially if using a heat gun or paint stripper, because those things could destroy the binding. And of course, that's not a good thing. I will say that I tried all three methods in my attempts to get the finish off of this guitar. I tried paint stripper, that was pretty unsuccessful. I did have some success with the heat gun, and that was how I took the majority of the finish off of the front and back. But honestly, I had the most success with sanding the guitar with like an orbital sander. But I digress, we'll get into all of that later in the playlist of videos. So I'm going to show you some photos or a photo of the guitar before this state, but after I had scraped the binding, so you can kind of see what it looked like. If I'm being completely honest, I probably went a little too wide with the scraping. In retrospect, I would have gone a little bit more narrow. I've read that Gibson guitars are typically, I think, 0.06 to 0.09 inches wide in their binding on their guitars, but I do know they use, real humans to scrape the binding, and so it's going to vary a little bit. But from what I've read and sort of researched, that's sort of the range. I'll show you some photos of what mine ended up like as far as the dimensions, and mine was sort of more on the upper end of that, 0.09 inches rather than 0.08, which I think is sort of the sweet spot. And like I said, I probably went a little too wide, and I think if I had to do it over again, 0.08 inches is sort of the ideal width for me. That said, my recommendation if you're going to be doing something like this is to start conservatively. You can always move the blade out to get more of a wide dimension, but if you start small, you can always go further, but you can't really go back. So just take it slow and steady, and don't go overboard at first. Start small and you can always go big if you want to. So from here, I'm just going to show you the footage that I took while I was doing this. I'm going to be talking a little bit in that footage, but really I want you to hear what it sounds like, because you know, all I can really do is show you the visual and let you hear the sounds. And I didn't really do that in my last video. I just kind of showed me doing it, showed the footage, but I kind of want you to hear what it sounds like. It sounds horrible. It sounds like, you know, you're scraping fingernails on a chalkboard, and it's kind of scary if it's the first time doing it. And like I said, there's probably not going to be a ton of people that want to do this, but if you're like me and you're really picky and you're brave, then go for it and try it. But again, I want you to sort of hear the sound, and I'm just trying to sort of communicate the best I can the total experience. Okay, I'm going to continue on with the scraping. I've already done this half of the guitar all the way around here. As you can see, this is sort of the stopping point. So I'm going to take the strap button off the end there just to get out of the way, and the pick guard mounting bracket, and that should give me access around. And then I'm just going to try to film it a little bit better, well, at least in a different light, and so you can get an idea, or more of an idea, of what it entails and how it goes. So you can see it's a little scary. The sound is horrendous. Now, if this, of course, was just if this was a color coat that had just been dried and not cured, this would be a lot simpler, and that's ideally when you would do this. But this polyurethane has cured probably for years, and so it's rock hard, and so I've got to score it basically, and at the same time, or go back and scrape the rest off. I don't know how well you can see, maybe pull this up a little bit. There's like a score line that the edge of the blade is grabbing, and then I have to go back over it to fully get the rest of that color off the binding. And I can use the opposite end of the blade too, just carefully to so I don't necessarily wear out this end. So, and I know you probably can't see that very well, but that's what I did over here. So I'll just kind of do a little bit more of this so you can maybe get an idea of how it goes. And those last remaining bits of color can be kind of pesky to get off, but you're, essentially just scraping, sanding it off. The hardest part, I guess, or the main part is the initial kind of scoring and getting it started. But so you see, it doesn't take too much time. I started over here where the end strap hole is down there, and then I'm this far already. So yeah, I'm not gonna probably film all this, or if I do, I'll speed it up. And I've been trying to blow off this part of the scraper so I don't get it too clogged up or anything, if I think about it. Maybe this is better light like this. I can't see it very well, but I think the camera's picking it up a little bit better. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm basically doing that in the dark with the shadows, so I don't necessarily want to do that with the freehand part of the blade. So I'll just do a little bit of this. So that's basically it, but I'm gonna play this guitar and use it in this motif, this color for a while. So I just thought I'd go ahead and scrape the binding and kind of kill two birds with one stone. Hey, if you're still watching, thank you for hanging in there. Don't forget to check out the playlist of videos of this 335 guitar. And of course, to like, comment, share, and subscribe because that always helps. We'll see you next time.